What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Retro Hoop Collectibles. Pretty early in the morning today for me, kind of early. I'm unemployed for the next couple of weeks as I transition from one job to another, so my mornings are a little bit less eventful these days. So a bit of a hodgepodge episode. A couple of things to talk about. First and foremost, if you have not already, please listen to the Card Hedge podcast. We drop an episode every Saturday. This Saturday's episode is with the great Peter Steinberg from SGC. I don't think I've had more fun chatting with somebody. Me and JD got an opportunity to sit down and talk with Peter. And it was a completely different episode than what you guys might be used to having Peter on. He was on completely as a collector. It was awesome. So please check that out if you haven't already. It's on Google, Apple, Stitcher, and SoundCloud, the audio version if you want to listen to it on audio. And then obviously we drop the episode here every Saturday at noon, sometimes at 1 o'clock, just depending. But every Saturday we've been dropping episodes, so check that out. It was a blast. Collect 3D prints. You guys check them out if you haven't already. All the cases. Man, he's working on a bunch of new stuff. My brother is. So check that out. Links in the description for that. Links in the description for the podcast. You can catch the podcast here if you haven't already. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. All right. So you guys remember I did an episode last week or week and a half ago. Might have been a week and a half ago. Might have been some time ago. Where we had this issue where Nat Turner posted a picture of a card that he had graded. You guys can check out the video. I'll put it up in the corner over here if you want to check that out first, if you haven't already. And basically the card looked like it was completely damaged, and they got a PSA 10. I made some comments about that, about the fact that it was his card, and there was just some funky stuff going on there. After that episode aired, I got an email from Nat Turner, which in and of itself kind of blew my mind. I won't give you guys any details of the conversation, but my response to his initial email was something along the lines of, I had no clue that Nat Turner would ever watch any of the videos that I make. So it was a little bit, I guess, I don't want to say humbling, but I was surprised that somebody with a small channel like mine is even on his radar, that he would have watched it. But I thought it was interesting that he reached out, because he gave me a little bit of information. Since then, Dan the Card Man, shout out to my boy Dan. We are diligently trying to get together and do some content. But as you guys know, he's in Australia. I'm in Texas. We're about 16 hours apart, so it's a little bit tough. He's got a family, a full-time job. I got a family and a full-time job in a couple of weeks. So we're trying to make that happen. We're trying to get together. But since then, my boy Dan has done an amazing job of putting together, all the latest information on that. But what that did mention to me, as some of you may already know, that this card was a crossover from BGS, and in the BGS slab, Dan has put up some pictures of, and you guys can go check out his video. He did a great job. He put some pictures of what it looked like in the BGS slab, and in the BGS slab, it had the same, what looked to be a big chunk of the card missing. I made a pretty big deal about it, and I you guys know on this channel, I'm always open to. I may get like pretty upset, and maybe not upset because it's not that big of a deal. It's cards with pictures of grown men on them, so it's not that serious. But I do get a bit worked up with situations like this, especially when it comes to somebody as high on the totem pole in the hobby as Nat Turner, because there's always this optic of funny business going on, and so naturally I saw that. I looked at it. I did some digging. I pulled up the pictures on PSA scans and all this other stuff. I mean, like I did some work before making that video. I still stand behind everything I said in that video. There's nothing that I'm walking away from. One of the things I also did mention in that video is that I'm looking for an answer. I'm looking for some transparency. I'm looking for, something to be done in terms of looking into this type of situation, because the optics of it all are very bad, right? Very bad optics. And to Nat's credit, he reached out and said, "Hey man, here's what's going on with this. I'm looking into it myself. Once I get the card in hand, I don't have it in hand. What I posted were screenshots or the scans. So I don't have the card in hand. Once I get the card in hand, I'm going to look into it a little bit deeper, and I'll let you know what's going on." And he did so. And here it is. So here's a picture of the card itself. Now, I don't know the details. I think on his Twitter page, he mentioned that I think it went back to PSA, was cracked open, and was reviewed, and it turns out that piece that looked to be like it was a chunk missing off the card, because it had some tearing on it, and it looked like it was torn, but it looked like it was maybe the top piece of the card, turned out to be an actual peel from the factory. So if you guys aren't aware, these Chrome cards back then, you can even see them on some of these new on some of the older like tops. They have these coatings on them to protect. You guys see that the lettering there? It's a coating, right? And that coating is on there to protect that high gloss chrome effect of the card. Well, from the factory, it's just a big sheet of like manila like coating or covering, a sticker that goes on top of these cards. And when it comes out of the factory, they peel them off after the die cut or before the die cut. They'll peel them off. And this particular case, actually, it's probably going to be after the die cut, they peel them off. In this particular case, from the factory, a little chunk of it was left on the card. And so this is what it was. You can see the little peeling there. It was the little chunk, and it matches exactly kind of what was on there. So that's the reason why there was this clear discrepancy on this card that looked to be like damage. There were so many things there that made you believe that this card shouldn't have gotten a 10. Also, in the midst of all this, we found out that BGS also graded this a 9.5 with a 9.5 surface, I think, or a 9 surface. That also, they graded this also the same way. And so the question is okay, clearly that wasn't damage to the card. The card is not damaged. The card has something on it, right? The card has something on it. On the surface of the card, there is something, right? And the question is okay, if I were to submit a card that was utterly perfect in every way, every possible shape and form, but then had roller marks from the factory on it, right? It had roller marks on the factory, and I sent it in that way because it had some, and it had some, it comes back a PSA 8. I would have gotten dinged for that, right? I would have gotten dinged for the fact that there was something on the surface that didn't belong there, right? And so there's a discussion to be had there about that, right? That says, hey, okay, I get it. I understand. That's the reason. But how was this graded, right? How was this card graded? When the grader got it in his hands, how was it graded? Now that they've taken that piece off, you can make an argument that that's a PSA 10, right? There's a possibility that's true, that's correct, right? But the fact of the matter is that before you take that piece off, there's something on that card that wasn't right, and it got a PSA 10. Now, obviously, we know about it, and I even think Nat himself, as I was reading through some of the associated comments with his Twitter posting of the card afterwards, even he himself is like, yeah, that's kind of odd that it got the grade that it got. So good, we put this whole thing to bed, right? He posted some other pictures of some other cards that folks have been questioning him about. I had no questions on them because some of those cards, the way the print was. If you go back and look at his Twitter page, he posted a couple other cards that some people had issues with that I myself did not really have an issue with because I know those cards. I know what they look like. And some of them look like corner damage, but they're not corner damage. It's just the way the print is. I had no problems with any of those. This was the one that I had the problem with. And now we have an answer, right? We have an answer as to what's going on. We have an answer as to what that is, what happened, what's going on. And the moral of the story here is we need a lot more of this. I'm not I'm not the biggest fan of Nat Turner in terms of like the business PSA side of it. I think there's some stuff there that still needs to be discussed out in the open. But what I am a fan of is him as a collector. The dude is a legitimate, solid collector. Look up his resume. Look up everything. You can go on his registry and see the amount of just monster cards that he has. And being somebody who's a '90s basketball guy, I completely respect his collecting style, his collection. And so the moral of the story here is that guys like him at his level, offering this level of transparency is what we need more of in the hobby. Okay? We need transparency. We need stories to be told. We need explanations when things don't look right. Because as a hobby, as we start to transition into this new phase of the hobby, after this massive run-up of activity in the hobby, prices in the hobby, we have experienced over the last 18 to 24 months an unprecedented amount of attention and people and influx and money and institutional money coming into the hobby. And as we come out of that, what's going to be left is the true collectors, and then a wave of brand new true collectors that have now become true collectors and are now part of this hobby that weren't here prior to that run-up. And it's important that we maintain the hobby as transparent as possible so that not only us collectors that maybe got here a little bit before the run-up or that have been here the whole time, or these new collectors that just got here but are just as passionate as we are, that we all understand exactly what's going on with this hobby at any given time, especially when it comes to the large institutions of this hobby who are essentially molding this hobby for the future. And again, I'm not the biggest fan of Nat Turner as on the business side, but I appreciate his transparency in this particular situation, and I hope that this is the beginning of more transparency, not only from him personally, because personally I think he's a great collector. I respect what he's doing in the space, but from now I'd like to see that same level of transparency with his organizations, with PSAs, especially, with keeping us up to date on what's going on. My brother still has a PSA. Those of you talking about, PSA 1 month, a month. No. I have an order out there with PSA right now that's been there for almost 3 months, and we haven't gotten it. It's been stuck in a grading stage for a very long time. And a lot of you folks have already gotten back orders since then, have sent off and returned and received your orders back since I sent off my order. It's like 72 cards. It's still sitting there. It hasn't moved at all. And so that's kind of the issue. There's still some issues going on there that we need some transparency on. And I hope that this new transparency that we're seeing from Nat, and it may be new, it may not, he may be pretty open about it, but in my experience, this level of transparency is what we need in the hobby, but we need it at an institutional level, at a high level with some of these big companies. And I, for one, wish that, there was a lot more of this. So, again, I wanted to do an update on this because it was something that I was pushing so hard, and it was something that I wanted some answers and some openness from. And I think for the first time, I actually got some answers from the people that I was looking for answers from, in this case, Nat Turner. So, let me know what you guys think. If you haven't already reviewed some of the pictures and seen some of the things, let me know what you guys think about it in the comments. Again, shout out to Dan the Card Man. You guys follow him. I'll throw it up here and I'll put it down in the description. He did a great job covering all this. There's a bunch of other stuff going on in the hobby, but this in particular, I wanted to make it a point to do this video and kind of highlight this level of transparency that hopefully we see more of going forward. So I appreciate you guys watching, as always, always commenting and stuff. That it's always good to interact with you folks in the comments. I'm on Instagram at Retro Hoop Breaks if you guys want to reach out to me there. retrohoopbreaks@gmail.com if you want to email me. But yeah, that's it. Thank you guys for watching, as always. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. Peace.